I'm quite sure that Lord of the Rings doesn't require any introduction from me. The world that J.R.R. Tolkien created has attracted one of the most fervent and dedicated and loyal fan bases in the entire world. And its popularity grows with each passing year. This is a story that has gripped generations of children and adults, and there's absolutely no sign, no indication that this will change anytime soon. But for myself, and I suspect for a lot of others as well, the first time that I really became aware of The Lord of the Rings was with the release of Peter Jackson's The Fellowship of the Ring in 2001. I knew nothing of Middle-earth going into the cinema that day, and I remember sitting down and being instantly gripped by that opening sequence, and since then I've been an avid fan. In my opinion, all three of those films are genuine cinematic masterpieces. And luckily, toy company ToyBiz recognised the potential for The Lord of the Rings to be a hugely successful property, and they were quick to support the films with a toy line. They had multiple lines for each film and at different scales. But today, I'm going to be taking a look at the 12-inch scale in what ToyBiz called the Special Edition Collector Series. Now, they only made 6 for the Fellowship of the Ring. That included Aragorn, Frodo, Arwen, Gimli, Galadriel, and of course, Gandalf. And it's Gandalf that I'm going to be taking a look at in this video. So as ever, we'll start by looking back at the packaging. I really like this packaging. It's quite thin and narrow, it's quite a slim line, and this is quite helpful to collectors like myself who have an awful lot of figures in their packaging and want to be able to display them and store them next to each other on the shelf. The design for all of their 12-inch figures across all the films is pretty much the same. They do essentially have this folding flap at the front. We have an image of the character in the bottom right hand corner there, which is taken directly from the films. We have the wonderful map of Middle-earth going across the whole of the packaging. We have the logo of The Lord of the Rings and the title of the film it is from. And then we have this wonderful window display cut out through the shape of the One Ring, which is a very cool design, very striking visually, and a nice little touch. Now, the colour scheme does vary depending on which film the figure is from. In the case of Gandalf here, it's from The Fellowship. The Fellowship of the Ring, of course, had a green branding across the packaging. The Two Towers had a red colouring, and The Return of the King had blue. When we open up that gatefold flap there, on the left hand side we have a little bit of bio about the character. We see more of Tolkien's maps, which look really nice, and then we have a huge window display showing the character in his box there, and looks pretty good. And all in all, this is quite displayable, very presentable, and looks really nice on the shelf. Now, the side panel is a bit more generic. It is the same for all of the figures. Again, we have the map, which is great. We have the branding of the film and the series that it's from. And then we have an image of Frodo at one side and an orc on the other. This is all perfectly fine, but when you stack them all together, it's not that attractive because it is the same thing repeated over and over again. So I would have preferred if we'd had a nice image of the character on the side of the packaging here, but sadly, that wasn't meant to be. And then finally, on the reverse, we have that same image that we see on the front of the packaging, and we have a little bit of bio about that particular film. So how does Gandalf fare once he has been liberated from his packaging? Well, I have to say, really well. The first thing you'll notice about this figure is that there's a lot of attention and care gone into creating this toy. In fact, I was really pleasantly surprised by just how much effort has gone into the tailoring on the costume alone on this figure. But before we start to look at the costume, let's start off by looking at the head sculpt. I have to say I was actually taken aback by how good this sculpt is and how great the likeness is, considering that this is a toy from 2001. And let's not forget that this is a mass retail toy that was on toy shelves. This isn't Sideshow, it's certainly not Hot Toys. But wow, it's really impressive for its time and for the market that it was aimed at. There's not a huge amount when it comes to paint apps, but there is just enough there to really capitalise on the sculpt and to really create the impression that we are looking at Ian McKellen's Gandalf. Now, it is always a bit of a gamble when you decide to make a 12-inch figure and use real hair. But one of the things I love about ToyBiz was the fact that they were willing to take a few risks and roll a dice every now and again and push the boat out to do something a little bit different. And they've done it here by giving Gandalf real hair, but then also that real beard effect as well. Now this could have gone disastrously wrong, but I have to say I think it's worked a real treat, and I'm really glad they went this route rather than giving him, say, a rubber beard or a plastic beard. This works really surprisingly well. The hair is really quite long. Now when you first take him out the packaging, it is held together with some elastic bands to keep it in place. I've kept mine in place as much as possible just to make sure that the hair on top is as tight as I can make it, but you can obviously undo this and have the hair being loose, but of course there is the danger that if you do that, then over time it's going to become more straggly and become a bit more worn and maybe won't be as effective. But I think they've done a very, very nice job with this. I think it's very effective. I think it works just the way it's intended. It looks very authentic to what we see on screen, and they've got the colouring just right, and it's very nice, it's shiny, and it works really well. Now, moving on to the costume, there is a hood, so if you want, you can lift this hood and put it over Gandalf's head. This can be a little bit tricky thanks to the hair, because there's always going to be that little bit of pushback, so this will take a little bit of perseverance, but if you work with it, this can look pretty effective. There is certainly enough flexibility in the hood to be able to put this up and have plenty of room. But he does also come with his wizard's hat as well. Now this is a separate piece. Now again, there is a little bit of resistance, and I think you're going to have to spend a little bit of time working with this to get it to look the best it can be, but I think it works pretty well and it looks really cool. I particularly like that it has the crooked peak at the top there. Again, exactly what we see on screen, and I think this looks pretty good. Now I'm really impressed with the tailoring on this figure. He has multiple layers to his costume, and they've spared no expense trying to make the most of that, which is fantastic. So of course he has his outer cloak, in the sides of which there are two big holes through which his arms poke out. Underneath he's wearing another baggy grey tunic, and underneath that there is a third layer which has a more closely fitting cotton bodysuit. And if we look at the sleeves on the second layer, at the very cuffs, we can see this lovely detailed patterning going around them, which I think looks fantastic. And if we roll those sleeves up again, we can see the green bodysuit underneath. So this totally caught me by surprise, because there's so much effort gone in here that they really didn't need to do, but I think it's fantastic that they did. This is definitely give this character a lot of texture and just a fantastically rich costume. If we open up the front of the cloak, we can see the great tunic underneath, and this looks really, really good. And you'll notice, of course, that he has a rope belt as well. Now, looking closely at this, you can see that this is an actual rope, so again, lovely texturing, looks fantastic, feels authentic, and there's even a metal buckle here as well, keeping it in place. And at the very bottom we can see how the tassels and the threads are coming away quite naturally, and it looks absolutely fantastic. Now at the very bottom, this cloak is actually sewn into the individual legs of the tunic underneath. You could unpick these if you want, but I wouldn't advise it, because obviously they're there to make sure that the cloak keeps its shape. And if we roll the leg of that second layer, we can see Gandalf's boots underneath, which are made of a felt material, and again just feel really textured. Now they're sewn into the one-piece bodysuit underneath, but it looks absolutely fantastic. We can actually see individual laces here, which again completely caught me by surprise. I was not expecting this level of detail or attention or care, and I think it's absolutely fantastic that they went the extra mile. And on the soles of those boots, he's got a different material. Again, this is like that leather effect. Again, just a really nice touch, completely unexpected. Didn't need to do this, but nice that they went to that effort. So how does he fare in terms of articulation? Well, again, there's a few surprises here as well. For starters, he has a swivel at the neck, so nothing too unusual for the time. Sadly, there is no ball joint, so the head doesn't nod up or down, it literally just turns from side to side. But so far, so normal. However, he does have ball joints at the shoulders, and not just ball joints, but actually a butterfly joint as well, meaning that the arms can arch all the way back and all the way forward, and they can climb all the way up and all the way down to his sides. So hey, absolutely huge range of motion here. This is something that we don't see on some modern figures, let alone figures back in 2001. So absolutely fantastic to see. Now he also has a upper bicep swivel. He's got double jointed elbows and a swivel at the wrist. And then there's also a ball joint at the waist as well, which allows him to turn from side to side and sort of lean to side and forwards and backwards a little bit as well. He's also got ball joints in the hips, so he can kick his legs out right to the side, and this is supported by an upper thigh swivel as well. So of course the legs can also kick forwards, and they can kick all the way backwards, and there's double jointed knees as well, so he can get his legs right the way back there. And then finally there is a hinge at the ankle, meaning his foot can arc forwards and backwards. Now this is a little bit restricted by the boots because of course they are all sewn in, but that posability is there. But not only that, he does come with a handful of accessories as well. So we've already seen, of course, that he comes with his wizard's hat, but he also comes with his staff, glammed ring, and a satchel. So all in all, not too shabby, and again, quite a lot of accessories here, which I think is really cool considering the day and age that we're looking at. Now obviously you will notice that glammed ring here sadly has suffered, he's become quite warped. Unfortunately, he is made of quite a thin rubber, which means that, of course, over time he has become quite warped while he's just been sitting in his box there. But it's also worth pointing out that Gandalf only has the two hands. Only one of these hands can hold his accessories because that is the only one that is closed enough to be able to grip. One is quite an open hand, whereas his right hand can comfortably grip both his staff and his sword. And I have to say, they look pretty cool. Particularly the staff, I think, looks really, really nice. Again, nice paint application on this sculpt. Having the brown and the black washes makes this look authentic, makes it look worn and real, which is absolutely brilliant. And in the sculpt we can see things like runes carved into it, which looks absolutely fantastic. And again, glammed ring looks pretty cool. Mine, of course, looks a bit warped, so it's maybe not it's at its full potential. But again, nice sculpt, nicely painted, and looks pretty effective in hand. And of course, we have to comment as well on the satchel, which again is just a nice little extra, but it looks really, really good. It looks perfectly to scale, and it just looks brilliant, adding yet another texture, another level of detail to this figure. So then, final thoughts. Honestly, I can sum it up in one word. Wow. I just think this figure is absolutely fantastic. Putting him in his time and place in the proper context of 2001, this is really a cut above most action figures that were being released at this time. I absolutely love what they've done with him. This is fantastic. I just love his costume. I love how detailed it is. I love just how many layers he's got. I just love how authentic it looks. Everything about this figure works for me. And then to cap it off, of course, he's got these fantastic accessories and that wonderful articulation. So I can't think of what more I could ask of a Gandalf figure, because I feel like I have everything here, to be honest. This is, even by today's standards, this is a really fantastic figure to have in your collection. So I have to say, if you haven't already got a Gandalf figure and you want one in a 12-inch scale, then this is the one to go for. This is brilliant. So see if you can hunt him down. He's gotten quite scarce on the secondary market, but you can still see him pop up from time to time, and I think he's well worth the investment. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a like, and remember to subscribe as there'll be plenty more videos soon.